Hi, this is Anne DeSantis, the Executive Director for the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is our 10 Saint Series Part 2, and I will be joined very shortly by our board president, Mickey Kelly. And the topic for our podcast this evening is going to be Saint Pope Paul VI. He was actually the Pope when I was born, and there's so much to learn about him. So I'd like to welcome onto the screen our board president in just a second here. Mickey, it is great to be with you today for this podcast.
Hi, and thank you for having me. And I'm very excited about St. Paul VI. I almost forgot too, he was also a pope when my parents were kids. So they saw, and of course he succeeded St. John the 23rd. In fact, Pope Francis canonized, I believe it was three uh, of his predecessors, since he became the 266th successor to St. Peter in 2013. So I'm not sure if he's going to set a record or what, but I mean that's pretty remarkable too, and a lot to unpack with St. Paul VI today.
That's right. That's right. I do have a bio pulled up from him from the Vatican.va website. And he was born in 1897 and he died in 1978. And I'm in my late 50s, so I definitely remember his pontificate. And of course, a lot of you who are watching, you've heard of the encyclical Humanae Vitae, which was really an extraordinary writing of his, which I think just celebrated its 50th anniversary not too long ago. I do have a bio. It's probably a little long for me to read all of it, but I will just let you know in reading this bio that basically that he employed methods of evangelization in order to address the issues of immigration, materialism, and Marxist idolatry. On June 21st, 1963, he was elected pope and elected pope, and so he took the name of Paul VI. Amidst numerous challenges, he brought three periods of the Second Vatican Council to a successful conclusion, always encouraging the fathers. Pope Paul VI began the practice of the apostolic journeys, beginning with the Holy Land, where his historic meeting with excuse me for my pronouncing this, but Ath- Athenagoras took place. In his first encyclical, Ecclesiam Suum in 1964 gave rise to the method of the dialogue of salvation. His writings include Populorum Progressio on the development of peoples. He also the masterful teaching on the questioning of peace, also instituting the World Day of Peace. From the very beginning of his ministry, he had particular concern for the young, sharing with them the joy of the faith. And then he died of a brief illness on August 6, 1978. And of course, there's so much more because, as I said, one of the biggest writings of his, probably the biggest one, is the Humanae Vitae. So, what's your take on him? Yeah, please do speak to us.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned about Humanae Vitae, which of course he is well known for that actually, and that actually came on the I would have to say that the 60s actually were really a time where there was a shift in the culture. And we're kind of seeing when the bad seeds were like, reaped, then. We had the sexual revolution. And this then, as a matter of fact, the Humana Vitae came at least a year prior to Woodstock. Now I'm sure and you were a little kid when this happened, but this was like they talk about like that whole flower power, free love, kind of like where the hookup culture had its I would say like where it was kind of like born, so to speak. And of course it grew out. And of course, Humana Vitae, if you have not read it in its entirety, I strongly encourage you to do so. Because most of the prophecies, most of the warnings Saint Paul VI warned about, most of it came true. And it's very alarming, especially when it comes to contraception, um, marriages ending in divorce, even everything that became agents, like basically the agents of the culture of death, were forewarned by St. Paul VI. And it's very scary that everything he said has been coming true one way or another.
Uh, I know that over the last, I don't know, I would say 10 years at least, and when John Paul II was Pope, that's when really Humana Vitae, I believe, started to come alive even more, right? Because we know of the teachings of theology of the body, which were from John Paul II, and then Christopher West really brought it to life. And as you mentioned, contraception, one of the big mentions in Humana Vitae, as you said, was the fact that contraception was wrong. And it was right around that time, as you said, of the so-called, sexual revolution that the culture was turning kind of the other way, and the women's rights, and then of course abortion came to be in 1973 with Roe versus Wade. So all of that timing was right around the same time, wasn't it? Talk about that, Mickey, because I know you're very involved with the pro-life movement, and I think there is a big tie to all of this, isn't there?
Well, and if you look at what has happened in the, let's say, from 1968 to now, you're looking at, say, like a 55-year period. And one thing that has really, one thing that really stands out is that, like in Humana Vitae of human life, there were warnings of what will happen when the culture embraces birth control, contraception. And, people say, like, oh, you know what? Women can do whatever they please. Well, you know what? They can, but there are consequences that come with it. So, women, in itself, taking birth control because, oh, I don't want to bring kids to the world. That says like what their ambitions lie. Like, is it for God or or their own selfishness? And I think what has happened too is that our culture has let the devil, come into our lives. Let the devil tell us what to do instead of listen to God. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job of. 63 million lives been lost. It's very alarming with the Roe decision, and it's still going up. The Dobbs decision was just the beginning, but I think if there's something we can take now, is we got to build a culture of light today. And it's not going to be like relying on politicians, but we got to change hearts and minds now in our schools, in our workplace, in our communities, in the public square. Do those, I think you're going to win more battles than you will in the state house or the House of Representatives.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for your great work. And those who are watching, there's an organization that we are connected with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation called the Pro Life Union of Greater Philadelphia that's doing great work in pro life, both in our area right here where we are, but also even beyond this area. So if you want to learn more, go to prolifeunion.org. That's just a side note, but I do think there's a real tie there to as Mickey's talking about the culture of life and of abortion, and then what Pope Paul VI wrote about in Humana Vitae. Now, if you've never read Humana Vitae, Mickey has the book right there, but you can go to the Vatican.va website and you can read it for free. Now, also on the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, there is something that I'm looking at right now. It's on the usccb.org site, and it's under Proclaiming God's Gifts of Love and Life. And it says, and it's just a short paragraph, I'm going to read it. It says, the papal encyclical Humana Vitae, it's the abbreviation is just HV, written by Pope St. Paul VI in 1968, provides beautiful and clear teachings about God's plan for married love and the transmission of life. On this page and on the USCCB site, as I'm reading from, you'll find resources that will help you deepen your understanding of these teachings. On July 25th, 2018, that was the 50th anniversary of Humana Vitae, and that's when it was observed. And then included on this website of the USCCB are resources and a list of special events that were held across the United States and other nations. They were presented here because of their timeless witness to God's truth. And I know there's a lot of other nonprofits and organizations that are really big proponents of Humana Vitae, aren't there, Mickey? I didn't know if you wanted to share about some of those because some of them might be ones that you are very familiar with.
Yes, and I would definitely have to say, first of all, you have the Catholic Medical Association, and I think what a gift Catholic medical workers have, to visit them, and they can help you gain some knowledge, keep you up to speed where the culture of death is trying to infiltrate in a field where we're supposed to protect and save lives from womb to tomb. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And it's very alarming that, doctors and nurses have to compromise their beliefs in order to appease bureaucrats who think they know everything, who think they're God. Catholic Medical Association, on the other hand, reminds Catholic doctors that are assuming they're Catholic, by the way, that you are Catholic and you must stand your ground on your beliefs. Excuse me.
God bless
And
you.
thank you. And I think another organization I could definitely think of is I would also have to say, like various pro-life organizations that are out there. And also you have abortion pill reversal out there. So if there's a woman listening to this that took the abortion pill, keep in mind you have 72 hours to change your mind. And you have to visit abortionpillreversal.com. Depending where you are, you will be connected to an OBGYN who's trained to help you reverse the abortion pill. And eventually, that baby can be saved.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. And of course, some of you have heard of 40 Days for Life, which is a wonderful organization that promotes that culture of life. We have a good friend, Dr. Monique Ribeiro, who's done so much with the sidewalk counseling and even with educating people on the abortion pill reversal. So thank you for bringing that up. And, we're talking about St. Paul the Sixth. Pope Paul the Sixth, but isn't there? There's just a tie there that we want to bring up all these issues because knowledge is power, isn't it? It really is when it comes to learning about the saints, when it comes to learning about those resources, and as we keep repeating that greatest writing of Pope Paul the Sixth was Humanae Vitae, and right now in this time, we need it more than ever, don't we, Mickey? We really need it more than ever for people to get educated on it and understand it. So if you haven't read it, of course, when you read a document that's written by a pope and a scholar, it's heavy reading, but it's reading that needs to be done. And, there's all kinds of resources out there. If you just key in to your search engine, Humana Vitae, and read some of the articles and things like that are out there, I think it's just a great way to get educated. And I just want to go back to the fact that this is our 10 Saint series part two. And we really thought that talking about Saint Pope Paul the Sixth was an important one because families that are in crisis could be those marriages that are failing because they're not educated on these things. Mickey, I didn't know if you wanted to share anything about that piece.
Um, oh gosh, I'll be honest, and I really look at it, and many of the popes were ahead of their time, and Saint Paul the Sixth was no different, especially when it came to looking at what the cult, like what the seeds being reaped by the culture of death. And like I said, like they have, they've grown. The good news is we can go back to a culture where all life is sacred from womb to tomb. And there's so much that's like, I mean, I feel like St. Paul the Sixth is probably one of the most unsung pro-life popes, that the Catholic Church has ever had. It's one thing they have popes like St. John Paul the Great, as well as the late Pope Benedict 16th, that has consistently spoke out against the culture of death. And we do need people to be more vocal about this, not just popes. not just the clergy, but all of us, no matter what our occupation is. And I think if we want to change the tide, now will be the time to do it.
Yes, now is always the time, because when we look at our culture, there's such confusion when it comes to human sexuality. And it's funny. I have to mention this too, that for our 10 Virtues podcast, which we're also going to have available on our YouTube channel very soon, is the virtue of chastity. And I do think there's a real tie between the teachings of Saint Pope Paul VI and chastity too. And in addition to what, his contribution with Humanae Vitae, I just want to read something, if I could, that I found on franciscanmedia.org. And it says that Pope St. Paul's greatest accomplishment was the completion and implementation of Vatican II. Its decisions about liturgy were the first ones noticed by most Catholics, but its other documents, especially the ones on ecumenism, interfaith relations, divine revelation, religious liberty, the church's self-understanding, and the church's work with the entire human family, have become the Catholic Church's roadmap since 1965. I mean, some of you may remember that Pope John the 23rd was the one that instituted the whole idea of Vatican II, but he died, and he died in the middle of it. So I didn't know if, Mickey, you wanted to share anything on that, because if it weren't for Pope Paul VI, we wouldn't have the Vatican II changes that we have, would we?
Not all. Well, you know what, Anne? So yeah, you did mention a good point. So 1962, well, you weren't even born then, but the Second Vatican Council actually would actually be opened by St. John the 23rd. And there were actually 17 documents, or 16 rather, that were published through the Second Vatican in a span of 3 years. And there was Gaudium et Spes. As a matter of fact, I believe there's a rumor going around that Ascension is going to come out with a podcast that's going to break down those documents on Ascension. I guess there's going to be like a couple documents a month, depending on how long they are. But I think that's something to look forward to. And then I feel like there's a lot of people that have been confused about some of the things that came out of the Second Vatican Council, such as the mass being celebrated in the vernacular, meaning that it has to be celebrated like if you're Hispanic, Asian, whatever it is. Then Pope Benedict XVI came out saying, "Oh no, you can still have mass in the Latin rite." So that was actually restored, but now it's under attack by, the magisterium at the Vatican and all that. Which, honestly, they should be busy cracking down on the shady clergy that are allowing sin, and of course not enforcing Canon 915, which is to excommunicate those supporting gay marriage and abortion. There should be clergy being, defrocked basically, and those supporting abortion, excommunicated. There should be more time and effort in that instead of punishing people who are doing good. And I feel like Second Vatican II has brought about a lot of confusion, and I highly recommend everyone to do their best, to do your research carefully, and also, keep an eye out too, because there's going to be a podcast about that very soon. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. It could happen another year or two, but doesn't hurt you, because like we said a moment ago, knowledge is power. And I feel like there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of myths that came out of it. But maybe we'll have a special episode on that. But for right now, don't be afraid of research those things. And also remember to understand that we're all human. But I think if there's one thing that did come out of the Second Vatican Council, was there were some clergy that were trying to raise like, hey, we got to get, we have to increase the devotion to St. Joseph. And that did happen. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. And, there were some things where like there need to be reform. There need to be more evangelization, which I think most of it's happening now, but now we have to double our efforts. And also, too, they had to engage, the modern culture that was on the rise at the time too. And St. John Paul the 23rd, he did what he could, and then St. Paul the 6th, he knew he had to take on the baton and finish the job, in which he did.
That's You said it so well. That's exactly what it's passing on the baton was what he had to do. And Pope Paul the Sixth was a pope for a very long time, up until the late 70s when Pope John Paul the First became pope. When I, like you said, when I was a younger person, and I remember that. I also found something, if I could read it. This is from cruxnow.com, and this is on birth control. And we're going back to talking about Humanae Vitae for a little bit longer. It says Pope Paul disappointed many Catholics who were hoping for liberalization of church teaching on sexuality as a result of Vatican II. Paul reserved the issue to himself and commissioned experts to report back. And the majority favored an opening in the church's position on artificial birth control. But after much personal anguish and prayer, Paul enshrined the church's opposition to artificial contraception on the 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae, as we've been discussing, and that means of human life, which remains its teaching to this day. In his final testament, he declared his pontificate to the protection of the faith and the defense of human life. So I would say that those two things, like Vatican II and Humanae Vitae, were some of those things that he was most known for in his pontificate. And remember, he's a saint now, right? So, I mean, isn't that a blessing that he became a saint? Um, I also have to mention our former board president, who, Mickey's been our board president now for several years, but our former board president, David Wither, and his wife, Kathy Wither, who was a former Archdiocese of New York employee for their offices, they are very much well schooled and knowledgeable too. And he had quite a lot to say on that. And so I'm very grateful to his leadership and his education, because another topic is NFP, natural family planning. And we don't have enough time on this podcast to discuss a lot of things about NFP, but on our website, we have a lot of information on our helpful resources page about NFP. I didn't know, Mickey, if you had anything to say, because it isn't like what people used to refer to as that old like rhythm method of so-called birth control, right? NFP is something much different, isn't it?
Yes, and I understand. Like I know people that use NFP, and it has been a game changer as far as helping them, with their uh, cycles and all that. And I do endorse it. I prefer that as opposed to birth control, which you never know what kind of chemicals you're putting in your body, which could eventually, you know, I consider it a slow suicide, basically. And I say that because some of I mean, you should look at the list of chemicals that make up contraception and think about all that toxic you put in your body. And over time, that could build up, and it has been connected with cancer, um, bad fertility, the list goes on. It's no joke. And I mean, I know a lot of people are saying like, well, I'm not supposed to have this opinion or whatever, but guess what? I just gave it to you. So no questions asked, freedom of speech. You got it. You're welcome. Checks in the mail.
Thank you, Mickey. Yeah, I mean, you're making a lot of good points, because obviously the natural way is the better way anyway, even aside from the fact that using artificial contraception is against church teaching. There are so many wonderful apps now too that ladies can use for their cycle. And if you go to our website, as I said, under our helpful resources page, you will see somewhere in the middle there that there's a lot of information there that we have on a lot of different apps, and just very valuable, invaluable information that can help young married couples or people who are engaged couples to learn more before they get married, so that they know what NFP is and what it entails. So I think that is extremely important to mention. Now, Mickey, I didn't know if you had any kind of like sort of final words on Saint Pope Paul the Sixth, because obviously this is a really important topic, and I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to share on him, any other words of wisdom, so that people can be enticed to get to know him a little bit better.
Yes, and I actually would like to close. I actually like to close out with one of his quotes. Actually, somebody should tell us right at the start of our lives that we are dying. That we might live life to the limit, every minute of every day. Do it, I say. Whatever you want to do it now. There are only so many tomorrows. And I'll leave with one more quote. All life demands struggle. Those who have everything given to them become lazy, selfish, and insensitive to the real values of life. The very strive and hard work that we so constantly try to avoid is the major building block in the person we are today.
Wow, they're great quotes. And I'm sure that people who are watching that, if you want to go online and learn more, please do, because we're doing this whole series on the saints. Now, we did a whole part one of 10 saints. Now, this is part two of 10 more saints. And so there's a wealth of information on our YouTube channel. So please do subscribe at Philly Nonnatus on YouTube, and go to our website too, and make sure that you subscribe to our email newsletters, which are going to be right on that front page of nonatus.org, so that you can learn more. Don't forget that you can make a free pastoral consultation with a Mercedarian friar. Go to our drop down on the website that says Priestly Consult. Everything we offer is free because we are a Catholic nonprofit 501c3. So if you ever have questions of your faith, or anything to do with something to do with your marriage or human sexuality or NFP or anything else, we're there for you. We just want to make sure that you understand, and that that we're here for you. Now, I also found a prayer on the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website. Every month they have a prayer that's based on something to do with Humanae Vitae. And so why don't maybe we could just bow our heads and we'll say this. It's in the October prayer for the intercession of Paul the Sixth. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God our Father, fill all married couples with your love. Give them the grace to love one another every day, to live out their promise to love in all times and circumstances. Help them to imitate your freely given sacrificial love, that they may choose each day to give of themselves, to reflect your love for us when you sent your Son to die for our sins. We ask this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Pope Paul VI, pray for us. Pray for us. Thank you all for watching this podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe and watch the other podcasts in the series. Mickey, any final words?
I would just say once more, like, if you have not read Humanae Vitae, this is your opportunity to do so. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot, and I'm sure it's going to be an eye opener to what he said, almost 6 decades ago, has became a reality.
That's right. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. So we'll see you all next month. God bless.
Thank you.
The St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith was founded in 2015 by the Mercedarian Religious Order with a mission to make pastoral outreach to families in crisis. The friars came together after attending the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia with hopes of creating a foundation which could help those families and individuals who have faced tough times and need to know that the Church cares and is there to help. Since that time when we were founded, the foundation has helped hundreds of families by offering prayer, priestly consultations, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. Whether it is something to do with divorce or separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, relationship issues, or other crisis, the foundation has seen lives transformed through the services we provide. Pope Francis has referred to our world as a field hospital, where there are a great deal of individuals and families who feel abandoned and they need the special outreach of those who truly care and wish to show the face of God to others. As a foundation, that is what we do every day, and we're grateful to people like you who help to make a difference for families in crisis. Please pray for us and for our mission. Would you consider a one-time or recurring gift? Please go to nonnatus.org to donate. Thank you sincerely from all of us at the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for freedom, family, and faith.